Welcome everyone. My name is Anju Korean, and thank you all for joining us this evening. And today we are here to talk about one thing, which is success stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, the journey of how people have made career transitions. And the title of this webinar is actually Climb, Pause, Lift. So just wanted to share why we called it that. I had a chance a few months ago actually to hear Layla Ali, the boxer Muhammad Ali's daughter, speak. And this was one of the quotes that she shared, which is all about uplifting people. And it's about, doing your thing, moving on up, taking a break, a pause, if you will, and lifting others up as well. And that really was what motivated us to have this webinar tonight to talk about success stories, because the women that you'll meet tonight, Madeline Detivo, Abigail Roberts, and Loretta Frail, who are all here with us, will share their stories. And we look forward to hearing those in just a few minutes. So again, welcome. So great that you're here and that you made time. I know many of you are busy with your families, with jobs, with various things. So it's great that you made this time for yourself. Just again, some logistics, make sure that you can hear us. We figured that out just a few minutes ago, that all the audio, the video, everything is working. So just take a moment and turn up your volume so you can hear us loud and clear. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand in the Zoom tool and we'll try to help you to the best of our ability. And just a few reminders before we get started that will help us all to have a great session tonight. First of all, you must hear this a lot, or maybe you share this with your kids. Please turn off your phones. Please turn off social media, get rid of any distractions that may be out, and really dedicate the next hour for yourself to think about yourself, your career, and your next steps are. And perhaps grab a cup of tea, grab a cookie, settle in, and we look forward to having a great conversation. We want this to be interactive, and you'll see in your tool that you have the ability to ask questions. We'll have a Q&A towards the end, so if you could hold your questions towards the end, we'll make sure and get to those as well. So before we get started and I introduce you to these lovely ladies, I want to share a little bit more about Vermilion and who we are, what we do. So Vermilion is a social enterprise, and it was brought to life by my own experience and that of my co-founder, Ann Barbara, in re-entering the workforce after a career break. So my background is in management consulting. I came back into the workforce in 2012, and what I did is when I realized that there were many talented women out there that really needed a boost and a pathway back to their careers. And that was the genesis of what we know as Vermilion today. We also recognize and celebrate the various chapters in your life, starting with graduation to maternity, to taking a break, to coming back, to perhaps making a career change, retirement, etc. Women have unique chapters, and we acknowledge it. We don't have the same career trajectory as men necessarily. Ours is more of a zigzag, as many of you know. And we're here to support you through all of those chapters. And through that, we really do provide a guided approach to career reentry, and have created a platform made up of you, our talent community, coaches, companies, and other community partners that we work with in order to help you get to your next step. And our mission is simple. It took us a while to articulate what it is that we really want to do, but this is what we want to do, which is really to lead women to the next chapter of their career with confidence, inspiration, and happiness. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists tonight. And I'll actually hand it over to each of you to give us a brief introduction of who you are and really how you reach the next stage of your career, or the current stage of your career. Loretta, do you want to start?
Me? Okay, yes. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm in the car. The trains didn't work, so I'm still trying to get home. A wonderful friend found me in the train station and is driving me home. So, well, I had a career break of 5 years. I'm originally from Spain. We moved in 2013, and before moving, I worked in finance in a bank. And when we moved, I took a career break that was longer than I expected. And I went back to work this past August, also in finance. During my career break, I was doing volunteering activities, working with the PDA, being a teacher assistant, and engaging in all activities I could at the nursery school with my little ones and in the elementary school too. I also started a business with a friend, relocation service company, but it didn't work as we thought it would work. So last year I contacted Vermilion. I started coaching with one of the coaches Vermilion has with Kuli Jaswal, which is amazing. And what I did the coaching, I attended a lot of Vermilion events, and I found the courage to send my CV, and I.
Loreto, I think it's cutting out a bit. Maybe we'll come back to you once you've reached your final destination. Is that okay? Yeah?
Okay.
So I should have caveated this a bit. So Loreto works in New York City and experienced some trouble on the train and is en route in an Uber trying to make it back so she can join us from her home computer. So we'll just give you a few minutes to get settled, and maybe we'll come to you, Madeline, and you can do a brief introduction.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Hi all, I'm Madeline Dettibo. I go by Maddie. So I was actually out of the workforce for quite a long time. I left the cosmetic industry marketing to raise my daughters. So I was a stay-at-home mom for 17 years. I also volunteered through the school and different organizations to sort of utilize my skills and keep active and feel like I was part of something, a community. And in 2011, I started my event planning business, and I thought that would be a great sort of start to get back into the field of working, but also allow myself the time to be there for my children. 7 years later, my children are gone and happy and successful, and I was ready for more. I didn't want to continue having my own business any longer. It's a very stressful industry, event planning, in particular wedding planning. So I was ready for a change. I felt the world on my shoulders, a lot of stress, and it didn't feel as fulfilling as I had hoped. And I wanted to really be with a group of people, a group of adults, and really be part of something that meant something. So after being introduced to Vermilion, I also worked with the same coach as Loreto, Kuli Jaswal, who was wonderful and really helped me to sort of seek out areas that not only my skill set can transfer into the corporate sector, but perhaps something I could learn that's new, feel fulfilled, but also not veer off too far from what I was doing before, to have to sort of start from scratch, which I thought was instrumental, which led to me working in the shows department, producing trade shows in the beauty division of Conair in Stanford. So that's where I am now, and I've been there 4 months.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And Abby, do you want to share a bit about your journey and your background?
Sure. So my name is Abby Roberts, and I'm currently Director of Content Marketing at Merrill Corporation, which is a technology company that serves the capital markets and M&A industry. So I put on for them thought leadership series called Merrill Insight, which includes monthly webinars, kind of like this. So I'm kind of excited to be a panelist, not a moderator for a change. It's very interesting to me, and do blogs and other things. And before Merrill, I was actually restructured out of my last job last year, and I knew it was coming for a while. So I really wanted to take that opportunity to think about where I wanted to go, and kind of what I wanted to do that would challenge me, but also give me a kind of good work-life balance. And I should say, I've spent roughly half my career in the M&A industry working on mergers and acquisitions, starting as a lawyer way back when. And I also was, in between that, helped kind of build a mergers and acquisitions intelligence news service where I was a journalist and editor. So I've had, I think, 5 or 6 different career changes in my life.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. So that's been a journey as well.
Yeah, so. Wonderful. Well, so welcome to you all. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and your experiences again with our talent community. So I always like to know who's out there. It's great. We have many participants out there. We'd love to just get a sense of our audience and who's out there, and what best describes you. So I'm going to launch a poll, and it'll just take you just a minute. If you could just answer, and we'll just get a sense of who's out there. And again, it's what best describes you. The first option is I've been out of the paid workforce and I'm exploring coming back. Secondly, I've been out of the paid workforce and I'm actively seeking employment. And the third is that I'm currently working but looking for a change. So again, just want to be able to tailor our conversation a bit to who's out there. And we'll just give you a few minutes to do that. So it's Abby, you were talking about these various stages or careers that you've been through, and I want to come back to that in just a moment. Let's see what our poll says. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. It looks like about, we'll share the results with you as well. So about 57% are in that exploration stage of coming back. 29% of you are actively seeking employment, and 14% of you are working and looking for a change. So it's actually a great representation of our panel tonight as well. So let me just close this out and want to launch right into it. So this concept of success, when we talk about success stories and what success means, and for me personally, the definition of success has changed over the various chapters of my career. And I would love to hear from you and from our audience as well, has the definition of career success changed for you? So again, I'm just going to launch a quick poll out there. And while we're doing that, I would love to hear from each of you about your definition of success as it is today and if it has changed.
I don't mind starting.
Abby, feel free to jump in.
Oh, okay.
I personally definitely think that my definition of success has changed. And, I think that that's part of getting older and having other responsibilities. With two young kids on my hands, I definitely think career success for me is not just about moving up the ladder, but a big part of it now is about having a reasonable work-life balance where I can, at least most of the time, get to the key kids things, which are never ending, and just sort of try to enjoy my life and not be kind of constantly feeling guilty about failing at everything. That makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And Maddie, your kids are, a little bit older, but I'm curious to hear your perspective on this.
Well, I have a very different definition of success today compared to when I was younger and in my 20s, and this sort of one direction to the top, as opposed to being the best I can be. Those are very very different things. I think that you can be at the top of your game while maintaining a balance. And just as Abby said, as you get older, you start to realize what's really important in life. And really the foundation for success for me is to have a really happy home life and relationship. And then the success and the effort, the success will come in my career by giving it my all. I now have the time to give it my all, but I don't feel it necessary to have it be the end all. That, you know, there's other areas of our life that create success. It's not just our career.
Right, right. A multi-dimensional approach to it, right?
Exactly.
I think that's right. Loretto, did you want to add something as well?
No, I think that my definition is the same as Abigail. It's trying to find work-life balance and trying to make it all work out, as opposed to when I was younger, that was like trying to get to the top as fast as I could.
Yeah. Okay, so let's check back in with our audience and see what they said. And I think they agree with you in terms of the definition of success changing, and in speaking to other women in our talent community, this is what we hear. What worked for you in your 20s or perhaps even your 30s may not be the case, you know, as you progress in life. And it's okay. And it's okay to step back and redefine what that means and apply that as a filter, you know, for you going forward. So so this is fantastic. I think you guys confirmed it here as well. Let me just get back here. And, you know, the next question is all about confidence, and we'll launch into a poll in just a moment, but I want to talk about confidence. This is the one theme that comes up consistently, both when we talk to members of our talent community and also when we talk to companies, that you know, companies want confidence. And I think, Maddie, you had mentioned, you know, you had a conversation with your a current employer, and this was something that he recognized in you. Can you share a bit about that conversation with us?
Yes, so I had mentioned to my direct boss, the director of shows, that I was participating in this webinar, and he was very excited. And he's very appreciative and understands the value that women like all of us can bring to a company. So number one, I was very grateful to him. But he mentioned that one thing in particular that stood out for him in my interview was my self-confidence. That I came in knowing what I wanted to do, being open and humble to learning, and understanding that concessions have to be made when I personally had such a huge break in my career, and that I was willing to make concessions, and that was okay. And because I was so open and confident, and I had sort of a long-term goal that I described to him, he was really happy to sort of take me on and also start to develop a new plan for me that veered off from the position I actually got hired for. And I think because what he described to me is knowing what you want rather than coming in and not knowing and saying, well, I don't know, like he really liked the confidence level and the direction that I had. So I would encourage everyone to sort of go into an interview with that in mind.
Right. And, you know, coming back to what creates that confidence, I'd love to hear, and I'm launching a poll right now asking our audience, you know, how they feel about, in terms of confidence in transitioning. Everyone has different levels of confidence at different points. And this is definitely something that we've heard from our members, is that, you know, you may have gained confidence in other parts of your life, but in terms of your career, especially when you step out completely, you lose confidence. So how do you gain that back? And Loretta, maybe you can talk a little bit about how did you personally gain that back?
Yeah, so I went to a coach, as I said in the introduction, to Kuli Jaswal, which works with Vermilion. And she helped me a lot. Like during the coaching process, like she let you see your inner values, what you're looking for, and gain all the confidence that after 5 years of not working, of not being with a laptop, and you lose the confidence because you think you're not able to, I don't know, I work in finance, to do a finance model or whatever. So they gave you the tips to to be sure about what you do, what you can give to the company, and what and how to sell yourself to the company in the interviews.
Yeah, and and this is also something that we share with our members is, you know, about inventorying what you've done, because as you know, you mentioned, I think Maddie mentioned, when you were on a break, you weren't sitting home. You were starting a business. You were volunteering with the PTA. You were doing many other things that people dismiss, and it's good to just start with a list of what your achievements are. And when you put it on paper, really is an opportunity to step back and say, oh my gosh, I have done these things, and to craft that story and craft that pitch so you can go in with confidence. So I'm just coming back to our poll, and I share the results. This is not surprising. So about 40% of people said that they are not confident. 40% are in the middle, not in the middle, but they are confident, and 20% are extremely confident. So I think that's pretty representative of what we see. But again, it's also about what stage you are in your readiness. As you progress through and do the work, I think that confidence improves. And Abby, I want to just come back to you, because I think this is such a important topic, is you know, for you going through a restructuring, which can also be a confidence killer, right? Talk to us about how you dealt with that, and was that an issue for you? Abby, I think you were just on mute.
Oh, wait, sorry.
That's
I'm
okay.
myself. I was in a very lucky position actually with my restructuring, where it was presented to me as a choice as to whether I could take a very nice package and move on or stay with them. So I think my experience is probably a little bit different than most people's experience.
Okay.
But I think I talked to enough people that I do think it's terrible on your confidence. And I can say that earlier, I definitely had, you know, it was interesting. There was I was looking at my LinkedIn before waiting to get onto this, and there was a comment about, you know, women in tech, and how there were these spate of promotions of these women, like right after they come back from maternity leave, and the people have experience with that. And I actually got promoted from my old job coming back from my second child's maternity leave. And it was one of the most horrible experiences of my life. And it was just very, it was a real confidence killer, because I had a very difficult baby. She had acid reflux. Maybe that's too much information. But the point is, I didn't sleep for a year. And I was given this huge promotion and this huge project. It was very stressful and very difficult. And so that was a real confidence killer, because I was promoted and then I was kind of demoted, you know, 4 or 5 months later.
Right.
And that was really rough. That was a really tough kind of reckoning of, what am I doing here? And is this actually what I enjoy doing anyway?
Yeah. I totally see what you mean. So I want to shift gears a little bit and get into each of your unique experiences. You know, so Maddie, you came to corporate environment after being an entrepreneur, I think for 7 years, is that right? So you were,
Yes, yeah.
Right? You were a stay-at-home mom, then had your own business, and then moved into corporate. So,
Yes.
you know, talk to us a little bit about what prompted you to wake up one day and say, you know what, I want to go to corporate. How did you have that clarity to make that decision?
Well, a lot of my friends ask the same thing. They think I'm absolutely crazy. They're like, how can you give up your free time? And, you know, I loved having my own business, and I'm very grateful for it. But I was really ready to do bigger things. I wanted to be part of a team. I wanted to build relationships with other people. I wanted to be around adults. And even though I had my business, it was truly just me and maybe the odd vendors here and there working on projects. And I just wanted to take it to the next level. And I didn't know originally if corporate was the way to go. But working with the coach at Vermilion, Cully, you know, she was very helpful in helping me realize sort of what kind of sort of habits and sort of daily routines that I really enjoyed. And I love a structure. So the corporate structure for me and the collaboration is what I thrive on, and I actually love it. So that I was so happy to come back to, and it was quite an adjustment period, but I feel like the decision was a good one, and I'm really happy I made it.
That's great. That's great. And you seem to be doing wonderful in that role. So that's fantastic.
Well, my biggest concern was giving up my free time, but I find that because I travel about 30% of the time, I don't feel like I'm stuck in an office all day.
Right.
And they're fairly flexible with me. So, I work not too far, close to home, about 15 minutes. So I can even pop home at lunch, or I get home early enough after work to continue to take my bar method class and things that I enjoy. So I don't feel like I'm trapped in an office and that sort of notion of the corporate environment. I don't feel that way at all.
Right. But that's interesting because you chose a role that allowed some of those freedoms that you mentioned, like the travel and being out and about. And
yes.
Right. So that was an active choice that you made to
yes.
type of roles, right?
So I had to sort of give and take. So it may not have been as high of a role that I would normally expect, but there were other things that were positive about the role that I thought, this might work to keep in that work-life balance scenario that I was hoping to get.
Right, wonderful. And Abby, can you tell us a little bit about your current role? So you said that it's a shift from what you were doing before. So what led you to head this direction? Was it one particular moment or some trends that you saw in the industry, or what led you to being in content?
Well, I think, I'd always loved, my favorite time in my career was as a journalist. So I'd always loved that aspect of what I'd done. And I think, the job search process is also a process of self-discovery in a lot of ways. You take a lot of tests about your personality, you talk to a lot of people. There was a great event at Vermilion, I think probably about a year ago, where you had people like interview us as if we were interviewing for jobs, and I got some really great feedback that way. So I think it was also just a discovery process of what, when I kind of gave people my past, what did they think was most interesting? What did they sort of see as where I was kind of the most value add? And where did I see myself as the most value add? So I think it's seeing yourself in other people's eyes, as well as kind of digging deep for yourself to see, well, what did I actually enjoy the most in my career? And what could be a version of that doesn't get paid what, a journalist gets paid.
Right. And so was that an active process? You went out and kind of did informational interviews, or you had coffees, or how did you go about doing that? Because I think that would be helpful for people to know.
It was a combination of everything. So, when I look at all of those different options, I always feel like it's not an either or. I ended up having lots of informational interviews.
Yeah.
Also just lots of, I ended up being in, a good handful of serious processes. And I think each one of those processes was a different method. Like one was through LinkedIn, one was through a recruiter, one was through networking, one was through like an email I sent, so I did
it all.
Yeah. I ended up in real processes with each one of those methods. So I just feel like you can't really, you can't put all of your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, that's great. And Loretto, I'll ask you the same question.
So what was the process and what the
about what triggered you, because you were at home for many years, and then your reentry was your business that you had started.
So I had my business, but it was not being as profitable as we expected it to be. It was a relocation service company, but we were focused on the Spanish people moving here, so we the people that moves here, they come from with big companies in Spain that already work with big relocation companies. So we were giving additional services, but in the end we decided it was not, like, the time we put into our company was not, we were not getting like rewarded for
The return,
for
yes,
all of
yes.
that. Yeah, so I decided to, I mean, I had a partner and we both decided to take different paths. And I wanted to go back to the corporate world because I had a very, very good memories from when I was working before moving to the States. And I wanted to be surrounded by adults, as Madeleine said.
Yeah.
And like going out of home and going into the city and getting the experience of working in Manhattan. I really wanted that, so that's why.
Getting stuck on the train.
Yeah, getting in the train and that's not good. That is the bad part.
That's okay. That's okay. But I want to bring up kind of the concept of confidence again, and your experience launching that business, and that was your first foray at coming back into the workforce. Talk to me about confidence and how that impacted actually getting back to corporate. How did your entrepreneurial experience impact you getting back to corporate?
Yeah, I mean, it gave me confidence because first I was able to create a company, to incorporate it, to do all the paperwork, all the website, to go and find clients that I've never done that in my life. I've never worked directly with clients, and I realized that I was able to do it, that I was able to sell a product, but we didn't get many clients, but
no disclaimers, just
yeah, but I was able to do that. It was something that I thought I would never be able to.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the interviews, whenever they asked me about that, although I decided to close my company, I don't see it as a failure because I learned a lot from it, and I think I gained a lot from it. So I think that it was a positive thing in the interviews that my manager and everybody, they liked the idea that I was able to create something from scratch and give it a try.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I think that's amazing. It's just interesting how people go out and do things and they minimize the impact. We have a lot of women, that volunteer, for example, for the PTA or various civic organizations, and they're managing budgets, etc., really contributing, achieving. And if you'll find that people add disclaimers, oh, I just volunteer, the word just, so it minimizes. So it's really stepping outside of yourself and getting a perspective that you did achieve all of these things. I mean,
yeah,
sure. And I actually have a follow-up question for you, Loretta. So your experience again is unique in that you're an expat from Spain. So you came to the States. So what differences, and we do have many expats in our community as well. What unique challenges did you face as an expat that you can share with us?
Yeah, well, first the resume is completely different here from what it is like in Spain. I think I mentioned to you that maybe in other European countries they have the same thing, that we are like only facts in the resume, and here you have like to brag. For me it's like bragging, but it's not bragging, but you have to sell yourself. So that was like, you have to change your mind and think, okay, I'm not bragging.
Yeah.
This is what it is like this here.
Yeah.
So first was the resume, and then the actual job culture is very different. Like, yeah, I mean, in Spain at least, it's more social. Like, you interact a lot with people, and even if you have lunch in 20 minutes, you go with somebody and you talk, and you don't talk about your jobs, you talk about your personal life.
Yeah.
And here, for me, it was very strange at the beginning, going to a store in the street and going back to my desk and eating a sandwich in my desk. That was shocking.
Yeah.
But now I'm used to it.
That's a big change, yeah. And about the resume, and I remember that being one of the first conversations we had when we met, and just that distinction between, you know, communicating your accomplishments versus bragging. It's very subtle.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I
Yes.
completely understand that. So Maddie, I want to come back to you and about your experience. Your most recent experience was as an entrepreneur. Did you find, as you were going through the interview process, that people asked about the gap or your time home with your kids? Were they curious about it, or did you just put it out there? How did you navigate that?
Well, it's interesting because Cully helped me formulate a resume that highlighted my volunteer experience prior to starting my business. And so I had this big gap, and I was very concerned about that. And yet I didn't know if I should include my Estee Lauder days back in the early 1990s, and that would sort of age me out of the game. And so, you know, there were so many schools of thought on that. And she goes, you know, leave those years out. Just start with, you know, your volunteer period and then your business, and really focus on sort of what you have to offer, even in the grand scheme of things, like maybe not tasks as much as your work ethic and sort of, you know, what it means to you to be successful in your job and things like that. So I think just based on my resume, by the time I got into the interview, my boss never asked me one question about anything before my business. Not one question. And in fact, he said, I really like the fact that you had your own business, because it leads me to believe that you make projects your own. That that's going to come very natural for you to really own what you do. And I want people to be accountable for the work that they do. And it's strange, in my particular department, there are a lot of sort of ex-entrepreneurs there who had either a small hair salon or they were makeup artists and had a business, because it's beauty products. But that is definitely something not to shy away from. And the gap is okay. And, you know, we have so much to offer during that period, and definitely highlighting any contributions you make to the school or to the church, or, you know, because my biggest fear going into this first job after so many years is that I didn't really have sort of the corporate experience to offer. But in fact, it's so filtered out that, in fact, as mothers or stay-at-home moms, we multitask so much that we can do like 10 people's jobs at the office. So when you get there, you actually have to learn how to scale back and not sort of take over and not say, oh, I can do this and I can do that. You have to avoid stepping on people's toes and let them do your job, even though I felt like I could do their job and my job and that person's job.
Right.
So that was a whole transition process, which you all at Vermilion helped me with in the alumni coaching session about how to navigate those first few months.
Right.
Very helpful.
Yeah. So Maddie's talking about, we have an alumni program, which is really about onboarding and setting goals and peer communication, really how to navigate work when you haven't been in a formal work environment. So I'm glad that's been helpful for you. So I want to come back to the question that everybody asks and probably has asked you about how you found your jobs. How you know, there's LinkedIn, there's networking, there's Indeed, there's so many different ways of doing it. How did you do it? Because, you know, again, the feedback and the frustration that we hear from our members is, you know, I apply and online, and it's a black hole. I never hear back. So curious, because you guys are, you know, you did it. So I want to know how did you do it? Abby, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, I think, as I said, I tried a bit of everything. I'm not so much just like applying online black hole, but networking, you know, going back to people who I hadn't spoken to for years, or finding people through LinkedIn who looked like they would be, you know, good informational interviews. And, you know, interesting story, one of those people who I had a nice informational interview with he ended up being one of my first panelists on my first webinar that I did for this new job. So it kind of worked out. Yeah.
Cool.
So I did that. I wound up, the job I have currently was through a recruiter. So, you never know, but that recruiter found me because he had worked with so many people from my old company. So there were lots of links there. But yeah, so I really think it's about trying every different avenue, except maybe just applying into black holes, because that's really work.
Right. Maddie, how about you?
I also found my present job through a recruiter who found my resume on LinkedIn. And it's interesting because I had a year of absolute crickets, and I was in that deep, dark hole, and I started to get a sense that I wanted to give up. I felt a very strong sense of ageism, and being a business owner, I felt like people perhaps felt that I wasn't a team player. So there were all these sort of insecurities starting to grow in myself, and I thought, I missed my mark. Like, I'm too late. It's never going to happen. And I was really getting down on myself. And I just like Abby, I started to just put myself out there. I'm not really comfortable with the whole like networking thing, meeting people with a purpose like that. I just like to naturally meet people. And in discussions, I just would put it out there and spread the word. And through friends, they'd have me call people in different areas of events to see what would be interesting if it was an area that I would be interested in. So these informational interviews, I wouldn't sort of, they weren't formal. It was through a third-party friend, but it was helpful in terms of scaling back areas that I would apply to. So just as I started to give up hope a little bit just before the holidays is when I got the call from the recruiter. But I also don't feel like it was just that phone call. It was really a roundabout way of opening my doors in so many avenues. And that is what started to build my confidence, I feel. And then it all started to fall into place. But it took a year. I mean, it took a long time.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. I'm not going to lie. It's not easy.
Yeah. But I think it's setting expectations, so when you a year, I think people, think it's going to take 3 months and then get disappointed. So it's about really being realistic about, and again, it's not just applying, it's getting your house in order before you apply, which it's a process, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead, Abby.
Yeah. I knew well in advance what was happening, and I thought I was prepared, and I thought I was going to be like fast switch over, and it still took me a really long time. I think job processes too these days take very, very long time. So, I mean, the serious processes I were in, they involved anywhere from 6 to 10 interviews. Like, it's not, it's not a lickety split thing anymore.
Yeah. And the nature of interviewing, there's behavioral interviews, which many people aren't as familiar with, and that's where that interview prep comes into place. And so that behavioral style of interviewing, for anyone who's not familiar, it's past experience as being an indicator of future success. So they want tangible examples of what you've done to really demonstrate what you can do, in this particular role. So that requires, again, going back and inventorying your success stories, your achievements, so that you can, pull them out of your file cabinet, if you will, during the interview. So that's really important. And so Loretto, I want to hear from you as well. How did you find your job?
So I also started applying to black holes after a couple of applications that didn't work out. I started not working, as Madeleine, calling all of my friends and letting everybody know that I wanted to go back. And eventually that is how I got my job. Like, one friend told me that there was a position open in his company, and I submitted my resume. I did all the process, and and I was back there.
Yeah, and I think that's, people are hesitant to reach out to their old networks because there has been a gap. And in fact, when I returned to work in 2012, that was how I got my first role back as well, was through a former partner that I had worked for. So in his mind, I was frozen in time. I was that person he, worked with, 6+ years ago. I had changed, et cetera, but his impression of me, my work ethic, whatever it is, was frozen in time, which was a great benefit.
I didn't mention that I went back to work to the same company I worked for in Spain, like 5 years ago. Yeah,
that's right.
And Anja, you probably look exactly the same.
I don't look too close.
Yeah, well, three kids later.
Exactly. So I think we have a couple of questions in. I would love to get to these. So we have a question from Anita, which I'm going to share with you. How did you go about figuring out what type of career or job to pursue after taking a career break, particularly for those considering a career change? So I think Anita's asking, how do you start this process? Would any of you like to take that?
Well, for me personally, my first step was working with Cully, the coach at Vermilion, and doing sort of the personality test and figuring and just having that discussion with someone who can pull these things out of you and help you recognize perhaps areas you would never have thought of before. Mm-hmm. And so that was really helpful to me.
Yeah, and Sophie is echoing the same sentiment. So Sophie had a question about how to get clarity, but I think that's what you were saying, Madeline, is really to kind of go into yourself and see who you are. And then the second part of that, if I can add to that, is also what opportunities there are in the market, and just being aware of that, doing research, going out again, talking to people, reading, if there's an industry that you're interested in, and just being aware. And, there's a ramp up for that if you've been out of it, and, but it's research, and there's, something that we talk about a lot, which is just having a growth mindset, meaning just being curious and wanting to learn and bringing that into this process instead of coming at it from a perspective of fear and what you don't know, and being okay with saying, that I don't know this, but I'm curious and I'm going to learn, so I think it's a combination of those two things.
I also, from a practical standpoint, I also felt like LinkedIn was amazing. I mean, I could get sucked in there for hours. It's like a black hole.
Yeah.
But one of the things I thought was very helpful is doing different job searches and reading through the roles to see what appealed to me and what seemed to fit. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then I would apply a screen, like a kind of like a process of elimination of, okay, there are a lot of things I'm qualified for because I've had so many different career changes, but they fill me with a sense of dread if I, read this role description. I was like, okay, I fit that technically, but would that be horrible?
Right, right.
So I think that's also a good way to test.
For me, that I have never worked in the States, that I was like concerned that, well, I don't have experience in the States. How am I gonna get a job? I worked 5 years ago in Spain, but nothing here. So also with Cooley, like I did all my personality tests, and we decided where I want to be in the long term. But we decided that probably for the near term was a good idea to start working in the same industry as I used to, even if it's not what I want to do in the longer term. So I mean, if my advice also for people that are for other countries and don't have experiences, even if you don't love what you were doing in the past, maybe it's easier to start by doing that, and from there just find your path and change to what you really like.
Yeah. Having kind of a longer term view instead of, expecting to land maybe the perfect, ideal job on your first run, right? So
Loretta, So that's, if I may add to that, I mean, that's such a good point, and that's exactly the position I'm in as well. As I had said earlier, one of my concessions was taking a role that I wouldn't perhaps normally take on. I knew that it wasn't sort of a higher level, but at the same time, my long-term goal was to get to a different point. So I thought, this is one way to get started. All these little baby steps, it may not be, going up, it could be lateral, but it's in the right direction. And we're never too old to take a couple of steps back. It's okay. And oftentimes, and this is what I'm hearing within my own company, is that once they see how well you work, I mean, it could go very quickly. You can move around or move up very quickly. And I think, Abby, you had a story about that as well, as being moved to a different department, and you never dreamed that you would like it as much as you did.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And I do think actually this is the job I'm in now. I just enjoy it so much, but it is technically a step down, if you will, from where I was before. And that goes to that point of balance of, do I want a job where I'm engaged and I'm enjoying it, and maybe I'm taking a step down to hopefully take a step up in the future, but doing something I enjoy, or do I keep going down the path of, least resistance, if you will, and take a job that I really don't enjoy, but that maybe pays me better, So I think that those are all kind of like tough choices.
Yeah.
And,
Wonderful. And we have another question coming in. This question is from Shobha. So Shobha's question is kind of a tactical question in terms of how do you go about setting up informational interviews? Cold calls, were they connections through your network? How did each of you navigate that? Abby, do you want to start?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, again, it was a combination of both. Definitely, I did a lot of informational interviews through my network, but mostly kind of like people who knew people. But I contacted a lot of people directly and would just, again, LinkedIn's amazing. I would say, I look at your profile, looks like we have a lot in common. Could we get a cup of coffee? And lots of people will really respond to you when you approach them that way. I think it's pretty amazing. And one of the serious processes I wound up being on, I contacted the CEO of a company. I didn't know him, but I knew that he competed with my old company. And I just, said, hey, can we meet? And we met, and it turned out I was on an interview and I didn't know it. So I think that this can be really valuable.
Wonderful. And there was a quick question. Someone just asked Loretta what company you work for. Do you want to share who you work for currently?
Yeah, Santander Bank.
Santander
It's a
Bank.
Spanish bank.
Okay, fantastic. And Vivica is asking about recruiters. A couple of you mentioned working with recruiters, and she was sharing that she's had several people reach out without it really going anywhere. And it seems almost that they're just trying to collect your name to put you on a list, et cetera. So how do you go about determining who is legitimate? Any experience with that among the three of you?
Yes, I agree with Vivica that it's very disheartening, these recruiters. First of all, they're very young and they're just reading from a list. they're not significant questions, and it does pretty much go nowhere. When I was reached out for my position now, it was a legitimate agency that I was familiar with, and I had actually temped for them many years ago, so I recognized the name. And they called me, actually another recruiter called me as well, with a very specific job. And just by the conversation, I could tell immediately that this was legitimate. And it was the others who were calling or emailing just in general, like, oh, I have some roles that you're suitable for. Perhaps we can schedule a time to meet. Rather than, there's this job in Stanford. Can I send you the job description? And if this is something you're interested in, please let me know. So they had information immediately for me. And in fact, they called. They didn't email me. And so then I knew, you know what, this sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
So I took it to the next step. But yes, there are a lot of agencies out there that are just fishing, and it really leads to nothing. I took a few trips to New York City, wasted.
Right. Okay, I think we could continue this conversation. We have so many more questions that we didn't get to, but also, just want to be respectful of everyone's time. We had a chance to answer some audience questions, and we're close to wrapping up. And really just want to get one quick final piece of advice from each of you for everyone out there.
My advice would be be confident on yourself, because you are capable of more than you think you are. And also try to find childcare in advance. Like have everything at least in your mind organized, or when the time comes, you don't have to start figuring out how you're gonna do it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And something else that we talk about is your home system and evaluating your system, because it really is a system. And when one variable, meaning you, are removed or not available in the same capacity, things are going to change. And really thinking through what that is, and how you're going to make up for that. So I think that's great advice. Abby?
I think my advice would just be, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Put lots of different eggs in lots of different baskets in terms of how you channels that you kind of approach the job process with, ways you think about it. Like, don't cast too narrow of a net.
Great, wonderful. And Maddie, do you want to add?
And to add to that, I would definitely be open to all types of opportunities. Something that you may never have expected could really be interesting. And just be open, be humble. And again, just try all different types of networking, whether it's friends or attending, small events. You just never know who you're going to run into. Even at the supermarket, you never know.
Right. Exactly. Wonderful. So with that, want to share a bit about Vermilion and how we can actually help you take those next steps that some of you mentioned. So really, to become a Vermilion member there is a membership fee, and what that means is that we will do a one-on-one career assessment with you to create a customized transition plan. This is a process that actually all three of you have gone through, and it's really about stepping back and getting an external perspective and creating a game plan for reentry. And the services, that we provide, just to be very specific, is really to help you, number one, above everything else, get clarity. Once you have that clarity in terms of what this next role looks like, or this next chapter of your career looks like, everything flows from there. We never talk about working on your resume or working on your LinkedIn, etc., without having that clarity in place, because that really drives everything else. So we would love to get to know you and help you in navigating to the next chapter of your career. And you can find more information at the URL on your screen, which is vermiliontalent.com/talent. And of course, feel free to reach out to me at hello@vermiliontalent.com with any questions. And I see that we have more questions coming in, but I think we're running out of time. But what I will do is just make sure that we grab those questions and circulate that via email to make sure that we get that answered. Would that be okay with you guys?
Yes, definitely.
Fantastic. So thank you so much, Maddie, Abby, Loretta, for joining us, for sharing your stories. And to everyone out there, thank you for taking an hour out of your busy evenings to join us. We hope this has been helpful, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good luck, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night.
Bye.